Imagine for a moment that you are safe in your home. You have locked the front door. You have locked the back door. You have turned off the lights. You check on your children in their beds. Everything is quiet. Everything is peaceful. You go to sleep believing that you are alone. But what if you weren't? What if, while you were eating dinner, someone was watching you? If, while you were brushing your teeth, someone was listening? And what if, while you were locking the doors to keep the danger out, the danger was already inside? In 1912, in a tiny town in Iowa, a person or a monster knit a house in the middle of the afternoon. He didn't steal anything. He didn't break anything. He simply climbed up into the attic and he waited. He waited while the family came home. He waited while they laughed and talked. He waited while they went to sleep. And then, when the house was silent, he came down. This is not a ghost story. This is the true story of the Villisca Axe Murders. The night an entire family was wiped off the face of the earth by a phantom who walked away and was never seen again. To understand the magnitude of this tragedy, we must go back to a simpler time. The date is June 9th, 1912. The place is Villisca, Iowa. Villisca was the kind of town where nobody locked their doors. It was a thriving, happy community. The name Villisca actually means pretty place. At 508 East 2nd Street lived the Moore family. Josiah Moore was a successful businessman. His wife, Sarah, was a loving mother. They had 4 beautiful children: Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul. That Sunday was a special day. It was Children's Day at the Presbyterian Church. The sun was shining. The church was full of flowers and singing. The Moore family spent the entire day celebrating. The children recited poems. They sang songs. They were the picture of a perfect American family. 2 of Catherine's friends, Lena and Ina Stillinger, asked if they could stay over for the night. They lived in the country and it was getting late. So, the Moore parents said yes. That evening, at around 9:30 p.m., the family of 6, plus the 2 Stillinger girls, walked home from the church. Witnesses saw them walking down the street. They were laughing. The girls were giggling. The boys were running ahead. It was a warm, humid summer night. The clouds were gathering for a storm, blocking out the moon. They arrived at the white frame house at 508 East 2nd Street. They went inside. They turned on the oil lamps. They had some milk and cookies, but he didn't check the attic. By 10 p.m., the lights went out. The house fell silent. 8 people went to sleep. Not one of them would ever wake up. The next morning, June 10th, the sun rose over Villisca. The birds were singing. The neighbors began their daily routines. Mary Peckham, the next-door neighbor, was out hanging laundry. She looked over at the Moore house. It was quiet, too quiet. Josiah was a busy man. He was usually up by 7 a.m. to go to work. But the curtains were still drawn. The chickens hadn't been fed. The cows were mooing, waiting to be milked. Mary felt a knot in her stomach. She walked up to the house and knocked on the door. Silence. She tried the handle. It was locked. This was strange. The Moores never locked their doors during the day. She walked around to the backyard. She knocked again. "Sarah, are you in there?" Still silence. But she noticed something odd. All the blinds were pulled all the way down to the windowsill. It looked like the house had been sealed shut. Mary called Josiah's brother, Ross Moore. Ross arrived quickly. He had a spare key, but it didn't work. The door had been locked from the inside with the skeleton key still in the hole. Ross forced a window open and climbed inside. He called out for Josiah. He called out for Sarah. He walked through the parlor. It was dark, even though it was morning. He walked into the downstairs bedroom where the two visiting girls, Lena and Ina Stillinger, were sleeping. Ross stepped into the room, and his boot slipped on something wet. He struck a match to see better. What he saw in that flickering light would haunt him for the rest of his life. The two little girls were in bed, but their faces, were gone. Ross didn't scream. He couldn't. He ran out of the room, crying, "There's somebody dead in there. There's somebody dead." The city marshal arrived. They went upstairs. In the master bedroom, they found Josiah and Sarah. Josiah's face had been destroyed so badly that his eyes were missing. Sarah was lying next to him. In the children's room, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul were all in their beds. All dead. All killed in the exact same brutal way. The weapon was found leaning against the wall in the guest room. It was Josiah's own axe. It was covered in blood and hair, but it had been wiped clean with a t-shirt. But as the police began to investigate the scene, they realized that the murders were only part of the horror. The behavior of the killer was what made this case truly demonic. This wasn't just a killing. This was a ritual. First, there were the mirrors. Every single mirror in the house, the dressers, the walls had been covered with blankets or skirts. Why was the killer ashamed? Was it a superstition? Or did he not want to see his own reflection while he did his work? Second, there was the food. On the dining room table, police found a plate of uneaten food. And in the kitchen, next to a bowl of bloody water, they found a plate of bacon. The killer had killed 8 people, covered the mirrors, and then he had cooked himself a snack. He had eaten in the house while the bodies cooled in the next room. But the most terrifying discovery was made in the attic. Investigators found 2 cigarette butts on the attic floor. They were fresh. They found an impression in the dust where someone had been sitting. This confirmed the darkest theory. The killer hadn't broken in. at night. He had entered the house while the family was at church. He had sat in the cramped, hot attic for hours. He had listened to them come home. He had listened to them get ready for bed. He waited until the very last child stopped moving. Forensics determined that the murders happened around midnight. The killer started in the master bedroom. He used the blunt end of the axe to flat side. He hit Josiah first. The swing was so violent that the axe blade gouged the ceiling. You can still see that mark in the house today. Josiah died instantly. He didn't make a sound. Then the killer moved to Sarah, then to the children. He moved from room to room like a ghost. He didn't just hit them once. He hit them 20, 30 times. He reduced their heads to nothing. But here is the detail that keeps me awake at night. 7 of the victims died in their sleep. They never knew what happened, but one victim fought back. Lena Stillinger, the 12-year-old guest, her body was found positioned differently. She was moved down the bed. There was a defensive wound on her arm. Police believe that the sound of the axe hitting the others upstairs might have woken her up. Or perhaps the killer saved her for last. Imagine being 12 years old, lying in the dark in a strange house, hearing the floorboards creak above you, hearing a heavy thud, 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 and then hearing footsteps coming down the stairs, coming for you. The town of Villisca exploded into panic. People who had never locked their doors were now barricading themselves inside. Men patrolled the streets with shotguns. They were looking for a monster. But who was he? Over the years, many suspects were named. But 2 men stood out. 2 men who represent the 2 faces of evil: the politician and the preacher. Suspect number 1, Frank Jones. Frank Jones was an Iowa state senator. He was rich, powerful, and arrogant. He hated Josiah Moore. They were business rivals. Josiah had left Jones's company and taken their biggest clients. Rumor had it that Josiah was also having an affair with Jones's daughter-in-law. The theory was that Frank Jones didn't swing the axe himself. He was too important for that. The theory was that he hired a hitman, a man named William Mansfield. Mansfield was a serial killer who murdered his own family in exactly the same way, with an axe covering the mirrors. Witnesses claimed they saw Mansfield boarding a train in Villisca the morning after the murders. But Frank Jones had powerful friends. The investigation was blocked. Mansfield was never convicted. But then there was suspect number 2, the man who makes your skin crawl, Reverend Lynn George Jacqueline Kelly. Kelly was a traveling preacher. He was a small man, strange, with intense, staring eyes. He was known for having mental problems. He was obsessed with sex and violence. He was in Villisca that night. In fact, he was at the Children's Day service. He sat in the back of the church. He watched the children perform. He watched the Moore family. He left town early the next morning on a train. He told people on the train that there had been a murder in Villisca before the bodies were even discovered. How did he know? Weeks later, Kelly sent a letter to the police. He said he wanted to help with the investigation. He started talking about the murders in extreme detail. He talked about the sound of the axe. He talked about the blood. Police brought him in for questioning, and he confessed. He told the police, "God whispered in my ear. He told me to slay utterly. He told me to punish the sinners." He said he climbed into the house. He said he covered the mirrors because he couldn't stand to see the demons reflected in them. It seemed like the case was closed. But then Kelly recanted. He said the police forced him to confess. The jury didn't believe he was strong enough to swing the axe that many times. He was a small, weak man. They acquitted him. He was sent to a mental asylum where he eventually died. So, was it the hired hitman? Or was it the mad preacher? Or was it a drifter passing through in the night? We don't know. The Villisca Axe Murders remain unsolved. The house at 508 East 2nd Street still stands today. It has been restored to look exactly as it did in 1912. The beds are in the same places. The mirror is covered with a cloth. The gouge mark is still on the ceiling. It is considered one of the most haunted houses in America. Visitors report hearing the sound of children crying. They hear the sound of heavy footsteps in the attic. Some people claim that if you stand in the guest bedroom at midnight, you can feel a cold breath on your neck. You can feel the presence of someone watching you from the darkness. But the true horror of Villisca isn't ghosts. It isn't the supernatural. The true horror is the reality of what happened. The reality that a human being could wait in the dark for hours, listening to the laughter of children, knowing he was going to destroy them. The reality that safety is an illusion. The Moore family did everything right. They went to church. They were kind to their neighbors. They locked their doors. But it didn't matter, because the monster was already inside. So tonight, before you go to sleep, go ahead and lock your front door. Check the back door. Close the windows. But ask yourself one question. When was the last time you checked the attic? Thank you for watching this deep dive into the Villisca Axe Murders. This story has terrified me for years, and I hope I did it justice. Who do you think did it? Was it the senator or the preacher? Let me know your theory in the comments below. Stay safe, keep your eyes open, and I will see you in the next video.